Great. Well, hi, Tommaso. Thank you so much for your contributions today, and thank you for taking some time to take a couple questions.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So, just to start off, I'm really curious about what you're doing. What's your research is at Imperial College, London?
So I'm a PhD candidate at Imperial College London, and I'm under the supervision of Professor David Nat and David Arizo. And my research started with a focus on understanding better the differences between psilocybin-assisted therapy versus classic antidepressant treatment in major depression. And now my focus has been shifted a bit on short-acting psychedelics like 5-MeO DMT and NN-DMT and how they impact our consciousness and our sense of self. And I have also like a personal interest in understanding how shared psychedelic experiences can impact romantic relationships in terms of romantic satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, empathy and communication, and so on.
Really interesting. One curiosity and question that comes to mind is if there's ever any angle or conclusion on the, for example, if you take 5-MeO DMT and the difference of using synthetic produced
Hmm.
DMT, 5-MeO DMT versus DMT extracted directly from toads.
Yeah.
If,
So I would say like from our perspective, there is not much of a difference, and I know that there are like different opinions on those and so on. But from a pharmacological perspective, the two drugs seems to act in a very similar manner to induce very similar experiences, and for this reason, I would say that the synthetic 5-MeO is probably like the most viable way to administer this compound, and probably also like the most environmentally friendly one. So I'm pro on the pharmaceutical compound, and I think that from our perspective, there's not much of a difference.
Interesting. And if we kind of take a step back and look more in general about the European landscape, do you think there's any countries that you see are leading the pack in terms of,
Mhm.
let's say, innovation and closer to, let's say, mass adoption of psychedelic assisted
Yeah,
therapies?
yeah. So I would say like in the whole Europe, without thinking of the European Union, probably the United Kingdom and the Netherlands are leading the way. And probably the Netherlands is ahead because they have psilocybin truffles legal, and I think that they are a good example of a country in which even if you legalize some form of psychedelics, there is not a societal collapse. That I think that is something that it seems that a lot of people are fearing about. But the Netherlands has magic mushrooms legal and available for recreational use, I would say, and the society is still functioning well and people are still okay. So I think that that's quite a remarkable thing that we have in Europe, given the normal policy landscape. While I think the United Kingdom is leading in terms of research on these compounds, on pharmaceutical development, and so on, in a way that is second just to the US.
Okay. Continuing kind of from our first question, I understand that part of your research has been dedicated to um, traditional antidepressants and kind of how they compare to instead of cycle assisted or psychedelic therapy. And I'm
Yeah, yeah.
curious kind of your conclusions and where you're at in that.
So we ran a few years ago a study in which we compared patients with major depression treated with psilocybin-assisted therapy with 2 high doses of psilocybin and around 20 hours of psychological support, and patients treated with 6 weeks of the classic SSRI citalopram plus the same amount of psychological support. And at the end of the trial, we looked how they were doing in terms of the depression, in terms of their well-being and related measures. And what we found is that, interestingly, in terms of depressive symptoms, the two groups were doing pretty much the same. And with depressive symptoms, I mean how sad they felt. While when we looked at other measures like well-being or work and social functioning, sexual functioning, anhedonia, and the ability to connect with others, we found that psilocybin outperformed classic antidepressants. And the same was maintained at the 6 months follow-up of the study, in which we still found that the reduction in depressive symptoms were similar, but psilocybin outperformed antidepressants in terms of positive emotionality, which I think it's key in the effects of psychedelics, because antidepressants are pretty good at reducing negative symptoms in depression, like sadness and so on, but they tend to restrict the amount of emotions that people can feel, like what we normally call as emotional blunting. While psychedelics do not do so, and they seem to actually increase the emotionality in people, they seem to increase their quality of their sex life, which is one of the major drawbacks of major antidepressants because they suppress it. So this was quite a fascinating results to see, and I think it kind of also make us rethinking what we actually mean when patients are cured from depression, because it's just not about being sad, but it's also about their overall quality of life, their relationships, how they think their life is meaningful, and this is really overlooked in psychiatric research.
Well, that's really interesting. And now, if we take kind of a step back, or say, we look at Europe in general, I'm curious if you see any countries that are kind of leading the pack in this psychedelic revolution, or let's say use of psychedelics in therapeutical settings. Is there any country that we want to highlight within Europe? Anything worth mentioning?
So I think that the United Kingdom and the Netherlands are probably leading the way, and I have to say that the Netherlands is probably doing even better, because they have this kind of interesting place in Europe where psilocybin truffles are legal, and I think is a great examples that show that even if these drugs have been legal for a very long time, they did not lead to a societal collapse or to people getting crazy. And I think this seems to be a big paranoia in other countries. Like you see, the Netherlands have mushrooms that can be bought for like basically any reason, like you don't need to justify it, and the society function well, and some people are interested, some people are not, as you would expect, but it's not leading to any negative effects. And but outside of it, I think the United Kingdom is probably leading the way in medical research in a way that is probably unparalleled in other countries outside the US, and probably Australia and in other parts of the world.
And still kind of about the European scenario, is there any recent data or recent results that excite you specifically, that you want to highlight, and that you think might be kind of the next big thing, or leading to the next big step in psychedelic therapy?
Do you mean in terms of like scientific research progression and
Yeah, anything you want to highlight that from Europe, that from
uh-huh.
recent results or recent data points?
Yeah. So I think, like personally, I'm curious to see the development of shorter acting psychedelics too, like an NDMT and 5-MeO DMT for treating depression, alcohol use disorder, and so on. I think they are a pretty fascinating complementary venue of how these compounds could be used in medical settings, and they could be pretty interesting from a cost and the resource benefit scenario compared to longer acting ones. I'm not sure how the research will be. It would be interesting comparing them, but I'm pretty curious about that and how it will develop in the future.
What particularly excites you about, let's say, shorter acting
Uh-huh.
psychedelics like an NDMT and 5-MeO DMT?
So I think like I'm particularly pretty fascinated by 5-MeO DMT because it seems to induce this very powerful ego dissolution or mystical type experiences in which people feel a complete dissolution of their narrative self and their bodily self. And later on, it seems when the sense of self is kind of coming back, that there is a strong sense of emotional breakthrough or release that people are going through, like by having worked in studies and guided several sessions on both an NDMT and 5-MeO DMT. I see that 5-MeO is characterized by an emotionality that is not really present in an NDMT. And if we look at the data, we know that mystical experiences and emotional breakthroughs seems to be pretty strong predictors of therapeutic outcomes later on. And if this compound is actually capable of inducing them both in the terms of an hour or so, can be pretty powerful. But it's a really intense experience. I think that the therapeutic support is particularly important around this substance, and there are also like companies that are really trying to overlook this aspect, which it can like it goes well until it doesn't in a way, and especially for this very intense compounds that can probably really like disintegrate everything that you are and you think about yourself. They might require some sort of adjunctive care later on for people to make sense of the experiences they're going into.
Yeah, this is definitely an ongoing theme that we see: the importance of therapy, the importance of integration, the importance of landing the plane, and then being able to bring back from these altered states to bring back into your day-to-day life. And talking about 5-MeO DMT, it's my understanding that at least traditionally in, let's say, indigenous settings, it is extracted from toads.
Yeah.
Right? But I understand that a lot of the research is happening around synthetic 5-MeO DMT. So I'm curious if you see any difference in the two scenarios, or the two, I would say, molecules or substances when naturally extracted or synthetically produced, and and also maybe the impact on from an environmental standpoint. I think there's something to say there too.
Yeah, so there's been no study that actively compared the two together, and it will require probably a huge sample size in the same way as it will require like comparing like synthetic psilocybin to psilocybin derived from mushrooms and the whole mushroom extract. But from a pharmacological point of view, I think that synthetic 5-MeO can be as equally powerful as the one obtained from Bufo, and we have a lot of phenomenological accounts that are supporting this. And from an environmental perspective, I think that probably like given this, the toads are already like quite a protected species, probably leaving them in peace and focusing on the chemical compound is probably the way to go. And from a Western perspective, it's probably the only one too.
Cool. Well, this has been really great. Let me just ask you, is there anything else you want to highlight? Anything you want to put out there? Any last topic you want to cover?
Not really. I think we covered pretty much all. I'm still highlighting maybe on my other parallel side of research that we are actively recruiting for an observational study that is looking at couples taking psychedelics or MDMA together. And we are looking for more people to sign up and build up a huge data set. So if anyone that watches this video has a partner and is interested in exploring psychedelics with them, please sign up on the study that is on the Imperial College website on survey research.
Is the study limited to UK citizens? Is it open to all of EMEA?
It's open for everyone in the world as long as they are planning to have a psychedelic experience in any setting, pretty much. So, but we are not providing any substance, and people are not getting paid for doing the service.
Great. Well, thank you very much. This has been really
Thank
fun.
you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.